Have you ever walked away from a conversation thinking, wait, what just happened? Maybe you thought you understood, but later realized you misunderstood the tone, the intention, or the meaning. I know I certainly have done that.
Mhm.
In today's episode, we're talking about one of the most powerful communication skills you can develop, curiosity. We are going to share how getting curious can help you gain clarity, avoid assumptions, and build stronger connections with the people who matter most.
Awesome. And before we get to that, we just like to thank our listener, SNP. Thank you so much for this review. SNP said, great spotlight on a much needed topic. Thank you, SNP.
We love the reviews, so thank you
Yeah.
so much for those of you who have written one, and for those of you who haven't, we would love it if you just took a minute to write a review. You just go into Apple and scroll all the way down and hit write review. It'd be
Yes.
awesome to hear from you in that
And
way.
then we get to read you online. So this is wonderful. Wonderful.
Welcome to Communication Skills for Working Women. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Rose May. Do you find yourself second guessing or avoiding conversations because you're worried about being misunderstood?
You're not alone. On this show, we're sharing tangible tools for assertiveness, emotional resilience, and real life communication wins and fails.
Let's sharpen our communication together.
We've been in so many conversations where we thought we knew exactly what someone meant. And we say we, meaning Rose and I, but I'm sure all of us are in this we category.
Absolutely.
We think we know exactly what someone means, and then later realized we filled in the blanks with our own assumptions. I just did this a few days ago. I heard where someone was from, and I immediately made all sorts of assumptions. And then through conversation, realized my assumptions were wrong. Honestly, most misunderstandings don't come from a lack of love or a lack of effort. They come from a lack of clarity. Curiosity has really been a game changer for us as we develop this skill.
For
When we
sure.
get curious, rather than making assumptions or getting defensive, conversations become easier, gentler, and much more productive. And I would even add to this that they become less emotional. I'm a highly
They
emotional
can.
person.
They can.
Yeah, and when I'm curious, I have clarity on what I'm curious about, and it's just opens up for new experiences.
For sure. Well, I have a story that I'm going to share. Actually happened about 20 minutes before we started recording. I was meeting with a client and we were talking about some experiences that she had over this holiday. Um, it was a challenging holiday for her, and we were talking about the pain that she was experiencing and feeling in that moment and throughout this holiday. And she made a comment about she asked for alternative treatments to therapy. I don't even want to say like alternative, but supplemental treatments. And we discussed the research for a second on those supplemental treatments. We discussed kind of the pros and cons. I told her about a conference that I had attended where there was a presenter on this particular topic. And so we were kind of really just discussing her options and trying to get a feel for whether or not that would be a great fit for her. And she said, should I set an appointment for this? And we kind of went into some dialogue. And she said, well, my husband has a lobotomy set. I think I might try that. And I was very confused. Lobotomies are illegal. So I was really confused during in that moment, and I could see my face. This was a telehealth session. I could see my face looking confused, and I knew that the next words that were going to come out of my mouth were probably not helpful. So I stopped and I said, "Oh, tell me more about a lobotomy." And then I said, tell me, what is it about a lobotomy that you think might be helpful for you? And she answered the questions and was just trying to get a sense of where we were going and what was happening in that moment. And then I said, I can't even remember what I said something along the lines of, well, that sounds like it could be helpful. Unfortunately, we don't do lobotomies anymore. And that's when she paused and she was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, what are you talking about? We were both very confused. When she said that her husband had a lobotomy set, she was talking about a souvenir, a toy. She wasn't really talking about having or participating in a lobotomy, but the context of our conversation was her specific words, the verbiage used before that was, should I set an appointment? Oh my, and then my husband has a lobotomy set. So in my mind, I was thinking appointments. And I was very, very confused by that. And then I quickly discovered that we were not talking about the same thing. And then we kind of laughed and it was pretty funny. But the point of all of that was that the conversation could have taken a very different spin and turned. Treatment in that moment could have looked different if my client was telling me that she was planning on getting a lobotomy, specifically by her husband, right? It sounds really silly and we laughed. Like I said, we laughed about it afterwards. In the moment, though, I made a lot of assumptions. And I made a lot of assumptions that could have altered the course of treatment in that session had I not asked some questions. So, we're going to teach you how to avoid some of that, or even how to just move in a different direction when you're feeling that perhaps we're not talking about the same things.
And I even said when Rose shared this experience initially, I was like, that's kind of an extreme example. And then as we were talking about it more, I'm like, but it's actually not. We use words all the time that
Yep,
set an appointment, I have this set, a
right,
toy or a thing.
right.
We use words all the time that have various definitions or meanings.
Absolutely.
And that's not even, I mean, those are just actual like direct definitions. There are also definitions that we hold within our hearts,
Yes,
And so this is kind of a silly example, but we misunderstand, we make assumptions, we think we know things all the time. And truly, I mean, you guys got clarity in it in the moment. Well, you kind of had to get
yes,
clarity on that in the moment. But there are many things and many times when we leave a situation and then the clarity comes. We go like, "Oh,
for sure.
I
For
understand
sure.
it now." So let's really quickly just talk about three tactical tips that you can use to get curious the minute you start maybe feeling defensive or you're making an assumption, you think you know something about someone. So one question you can ask is, "Can you walk me through what you meant by that?" So this is just clarifying. Can you walk me through what you meant by that?
For sure. And I didn't use those exact words, but I did use something along the lines of, oh, tell me a little bit more about what you were thinking. And we've talked about this before in previous podcast episodes, but even just like, oh, share, can you share? Tell me a little bit more.
Yes.
I think that's a very harmless way of asking someone to elaborate so you can get in for more information, right?
And make sure the question sounds like you, not, can you walk me through what you meant by that? I
Yes.
would
If you
never
don't
say
ever
that.
use those words, people gonna be looking at you like you're strange. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you say, oh, tell me more, I
Yeah.
say, tell me more all the time. Tell me
I do
more.
too.
Tell me
Yeah.
more. Tell me more. And it blows my mind, even in something that I'm actually not that curious about, but I really don't really have a response to. I'll be like, oh, tell me more. People are love to share more.
For
So the
sure.
next thing is you want to find out really what matters most. So what's the part of this that feels most important to you? So if
Mm.
you're making assumptions for somebody, find out what's important to them. It'll clarify so much and it just helps build curiosity. What's the
In
part
this
that,
situation, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say it again.
Yeah. Oh, in this situation, I asked her. oh, tell me what you think, like having a lobotomy, like how would that help you? How would
Yeah,
how would removing a part of your brain be helpful for you? Right. And that was getting at more some processy type of feelings, kind of interventions and questions in the moment. But it certainly would have given me insight into what she was experiencing in that moment. And I think that
yep,
like when we ask these questions, like what's the part of this that feels most important to you, we're actually getting to something that feels relevant to an individual and helping us understand their point of view. Right.
absolutely. And you're talking about providing treatment for somebody. I'm
Mhm.
thinking about right now, I work on a lot of projects with people where we have different assignments. We're dividing things up, we're working on events, and I sometimes will just you do this, you do this, you do this, and I can come across very like I almost where it feels like it's urgent, but it's actually not. It's just I'm being very direct and I'm moving forward. And so someone asking a question along those lines of what part is important to you or when do you want this done by or just getting curious instead of like, oh gosh, she wants this done. Like making as soon as you're making an assumption, get curious instead. And so I've had people ask me that question before, and I'm like, oh, whenever you want. They're like, oh, okay. I mean, I rarely
Yeah.
say whenever you want. I'll say, like,
Yeah.
oh, we don't need this till our next meeting. And they're like, oh, I thought you wanted it done like by tomorrow. And so it's great feedback too for you
Yeah.
when people get curious for you. The third thing is just trying to get a bigger picture, right? Before I respond, is there anything else I should know? This also is tell me more. But this is a little bit more direct where you really are trying to get a bigger vision. And I like that part of before I respond, is there
Yes.
anything else I should know? Or before I respond, what else is important for you to share with me?
Well, and I don't even know if this is not in your wheelhouse or your everyday vocabulary or vernacular. You could even ask yourself before I respond, what else should I know about this situation,
Yeah,
right? And then using that to ask other questions or to, continue your curiosity journey. But right, so even an internal process, this question might be like a great resource for just examining what's going on internally, right? And
absolutely.
pausing before
Hmm.
we speak next.
Pausing, being clear on what you want to
Yeah.
really understand, or yeah.
Yeah. So, what's your assignment? This week, you're going to choose one curiosity question and use it in your next meaningful conversation. Can you walk me through what you meant by that? What's the part that feels most important to you? And before I respond, is there anything else I should know? Challenge yourself. Step out of your comfort zone and then observe. Notice how the conversation shifts and how you shift. Let curiosity lead the conversation.
We would absolutely love to connect with you. You can find us on Facebook at Develop Confidence in Relationships Through Effective Communication Skills. You can visit our website at communicateconnectthrive.com or email us at communicationskillsforwomen@gmail.com. You could also leave us a review. We would love a review on Apple. Until next time, speak clearly and listen bravely.
When you feel confident in your communication, everything changes.
We'd love to hear your wins, failures, and insights on Instagram at Communication Skills for Women. Leave a review and connect with us.
Until next time, speak clearly and listen bravely.